Remember when TV executives would take perfectly good source material and just absolutely butcher it for Saturday morning? The 1970s were the golden age of cartoon adaptations gone wild, where comic books, movies, and even real people got transformed into barely recognizable animated versions. Did you know one famous rock band's cartoon had them fighting ghosts without their permission? Get ready for the most jaw-dropping cartoon rewrites that'll make you wonder what the networks were smoking. The Jackson 5, 1971 to 1973. Motown's biggest group never actually voiced their own cartoon. That's right. When the Jackson 5 hit Saturday mornings in 1971, the actual Jackson brothers were nowhere near a recording booth. Rankin Bass completely rewrote the band's image, turning Michael, Jermaine, Tito, Jackie, and Marlon into psychedelic adventurers who solved mysteries between performances. In one wild episode, they encountered talking snakes and pet mice while navigating dream sequences that would give anyone motion sickness. The show's plot lines bounced between fantastical adventures that had nothing to do with the group's actual lives or music. The most outrageous part? The real Jacksons had almost no creative input. The network had white voice actors putting on hip personas while the actual Jackson 5 were out touring. Their songs played in the background, but everything else was pure fiction. The cartoon ran for 2 successful seasons, despite completely rewriting the band's identity and giving them dialogue they never approved. Critics later pointed out how the show managed to be both groundbreaking for featuring black main characters while simultaneously playing into troubling stereotypes. Still, kids loved it, and it remains a time capsule of an era when celebrities had zero control over their animated counterparts. Super Friends, 1973 to 1986. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman weren't enough for ABC, apparently. When Hanna-Barbera adapted DC's Justice League for Super Friends, they rewrote the entire superhero dynamic, adding kid sidekicks Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog, who had absolutely zero connection to the comics. But here's the kicker. To add diversity, Hanna-Barbera invented new heroes like Apache Chief, Black Vulcan, Samurai, and El Dorado. If that sounds progressive, wait till you see the execution. Each ethnic hero was a walking, talking stereotype. Apache Chief grows big by saying, "Inuk Chuck." Just why? Samurai spouts fortune cookie proverbs, and El Dorado's main superpower seems to be an accent. Comic book fans were horrified as their gritty heroes became Saturday morning do-gooders who delivered heavy-handed moral lessons. Batman went from Dark Knight to dispensing dad wisdom. Aquaman became the laughingstock of the superhero community, reduced to talking to fish while everyone else had actual powers. Network censors forced writers to remove nearly all violence, turning epic comic book battles into contests where heroes would trap villains in elaborate nets or bubbles. Despite completely missing what made these characters great, Super Friends ran for over a decade, spinning off endless reboots and becoming an accidental comedy classic that rewrote superhero history. Star Trek: The Animated Series, 1973 to 1974. Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future boldly went where no cartoon had gone before, straight into Saturday morning surrealism. NBC's animated Star Trek brought back the original cast to voice their characters, but completely rewrote the show's format and tone. When Star Trek: The Animated Series hit the airwaves in 1973, it promised to bring the final frontier to a new generation of viewers. But what parents and censors got instead was a heady mix of existential crises, alien religions, and interstellar debates about racism and war, all before noon on a Saturday. The animation studio went wild with alien designs that would have been impossible in the live-action show. 3-armed crew members, 6-foot-tall cat people, and creatures made of pure energy. One episode featured a 20-foot Spock after a transporter accident, while another introduced Kirk's nephew, who transformed into an energy being. Religious groups were especially unhappy. In the episode The Magics of Magus II, the Enterprise crew encountered a being who looked suspiciously like the devil and visited a planet where magic was real. For some, it was a fun fantasy. For others, it was promoting Satanism to children. TV stations in the Bible Belt refused to air the episode, and international broadcasters in countries like Germany and the UK skipped it entirely, worried about inappropriate religious themes. Despite lasting only 22 episodes, the animated Star Trek expanded the universe in ways that would later become official canon, all while delivering philosophical conundrums that made children's heads spin and parents question what exactly their kids were watching. Speed Buggy, 1973. What happens when you cross Scooby-Doo with a dune buggy? Hanna-Barbera's Speed Buggy completely rewrote the talking animal sidekick formula by replacing the Great Dane with a stuttering orange vehicle that somehow had emotions, consciousness, and a personality disorder. This lively cartoon followed a group of friends, Tinker, Debbie, and Mark, who traveled around solving mysteries and competing in races with their trusty car Speed Buggy. And when I say stuttering, I mean it. Speedy's whole personality is wrapped up in a comedic speech impediment, which is played for laughs in every single episode. The show basically ripped off the Scooby-Doo formula, but replaced person in a monster costume with villain using technology for crime. Every episode, Speed Buggy would accidentally save the day through bumbling or sneezing at the right moment. The gang bounces from one exotic location to the next, each time encountering wildly stereotyped natives, accents that make you squint, and comic misunderstandings that are less funny and more yikes. Did they really just say that? Mel Blanc provided Speed Buggy's voice, delivering what must have been the strangest character in his legendary career. Despite being derivative and wildly inconsistent, sometimes Speed Buggy could drive himself, sometimes he needed a driver. The show ran in syndication for years, proving that kids will watch literally anything if it has a catchy theme song and slapstick humor. Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space, 1972. Hanna-Barbera looked at their successful Josie and the Pussycats cartoon and thought, you know what this girl band needs? Space adventures. In one of animation's most bizarre rewrites, the studio literally launched Josie, Valerie, Melody, and their friends into orbit with zero explanation. When Josie and the Pussycats accidentally got blasted into space, each episode dropped them on a new alien planet, except the aliens are almost always thinly veiled caricatures of Earth cultures, complete with exaggerated costumes, phony accents, and customs that feel like the writers were working off a list of cliches. The strangest part was how the show kept pretending to be about music. The band would somehow still perform concerts on alien worlds between running from space monsters. Their instruments never needed electricity, and aliens across the galaxy apparently loved Earth pop music. Valerie, one of the first black female cartoon leads, is often sidelined or given lines that are as tone-deaf as a broken guitar. The show can't decide if it wants to celebrate diversity or just use it for easy gags. Meanwhile, Alexandra, the show's villain, continued her earthbound schemes to steal Josie's boyfriend while floating through the cosmos. Critics panned the bizarre rewrite, but the show developed a cult following among viewers who appreciated its complete absurdity. After 16 episodes, the Pussycats somehow returned to Earth without explanation, their space adventures never mentioned again in cartoon continuity. The New Adventures of Batman, 1977. Adam West and Burt Ward returned to voice the dynamic duo in this Filmation series that completely rewrote Batman from a serious detective into a babysitter for the most annoying sidekick in animation history, Batmite. The show featured the voices of live-action Batman characters Adam West and Burt Ward as Batman and Robin, respectively. The series also introduced a new character, Batmite. He was an imp from another dimension who idolized Batman and often created more trouble than help with his magical powers. Batmite was essentially Batman's Scrappy-Doo, a pint-sized superfan with reality-warping powers who wanted to help, but always made things worse. Imagine fighting the Joker while a floating magical creature in a homemade Batman costume keeps turning your batarangs into butterflies. The show completely rewrote Batman's rogues gallery too. The Joker became a prankster who wouldn't hurt a fly. Catwoman was reduced to cat puns. The Penguin waddled around without any of his trademark deadly umbrellas. Everything dangerous was removed to appease TV censors. Batman veterans West and Ward did their best with the material, but you could almost hear their souls dying as they delivered lines like, "Batmite, please don't turn the Batmobile into a giant banana again." Despite the legendary actor's involvement, the show lasted just one bizarre season before disappearing faster than Batman into the night. The New Adventures of Gilligan's Island, 1974 to 1975. Sherwood Schwartz's live-action sitcom hit Gilligan's Island got completely rewritten for animation. turning a show about castaways into a fantasy series where the stranded crew had weekly encounters with aliens, ghosts, and magical creatures. The New Adventures of Gilligan stayed true to the original show's comedic charm, following Gilligan, the skipper, and the rest of the crew as they navigated life on their deserted island. Each episode delivered the same slapstick humor and lighthearted hijinks that fans of the live-action series loved, with a fresh animated twist. The cartoon went completely off the rails, however, with plot lines that would never have worked in the original. In one episode, Gilligan gains superpowers from radioactive seeds. In another, the castaways build a functioning robot from bamboo and coconuts. The professor, who couldn't fix a 2-foot hole in a boat on the live-action show, somehow builds advanced technology weekly in the cartoon. Most episodes opened with Gilligan having a bizarre dream sequence involving monsters, time travel, or superhero adventures. A cheap animation trick that let the writers go wild before returning to the island setting. The original cast provided the voices, except for Tina Louise, Ginger, who was replaced by Jane Webb. Despite completely abandoning the show's premise in favor of fantasy adventures, the cartoon ran for 2 seasons and 24 episodes before executives finally realized that turning a sitcom about stranded people into Scooby-Doo on an island might have been a mistake. Hong Kong Phooey, 1974. Scatman Crothers voiced this Hanna-Barbera rewrite of the martial arts genre, featuring a janitor dog who transformed into a karate-chopping superhero by jumping into a file cabinet. Just one problem: Hong Kong Phooey was terrible at kung fu. This is one of those cartoons that only could have existed in an era when being wacky apparently meant mining entire cultures for punchlines. Let's start with the basics. Hong Kong Phooey is a bumbling janitor dog named Henry Pooch who transforms into a supposed martial arts superhero complete with a mock Asian accent and a laundry list of kung fu cliches. The whole show is a greatest hits parade of stereotypes, mishmashed Eastern philosophy, fortune cookie wisdom, and sound effects that would make Bruce Lee spin in his grave. Never mind that the martial arts in question seem to consist mostly of tripping over mops and crashing into filing cabinets. The most ridiculous part? Hong Kong Phooey only succeeded because his cat's sidekick, Spot, secretly did all the actual crime fighting while the hero took credit. Every episode, Hong Kong Phooey would consult his Hong Kong Book of Kung Fu, attempt a move, fail spectacularly, and then accidentally defeat the villain while Spot rolled his eyes. The show ran for just 16 episodes, but spawned tons of merchandise. Kids across America were wearing Hong Kong Phooey pajamas and carrying lunchboxes featuring a character who represented both martial arts incompetence and cultural stereotyping, so severe it would cause an international incident if aired today. Sealab 2020, 1972. Hanna-Barbera completely rewrote marine science for this futuristic show about an underwater research facility, turning oceanography into a vehicle for heavy-handed environmental messages and surprisingly dark storylines about disaster and death. This Hanna-Barbera cartoon took viewers to an advanced underwater research facility in the year 2020, a future that felt distant and exciting in the 1970s. The show followed Dr. Paul Williams, his family, and a diverse crew as they tackled environmental crises and explored the ocean's mysteries. The show's heroes didn't always win by punching their way out. They had to make tough, ethical choices and sometimes deal with loss, setbacks, and the knowledge that the ocean's dangers were as real as anything on land. Episodes featured oil spills, nuclear meltdowns, and the very real possibility that everyone in Sealab could drown at any moment. Parents flooded broadcasters with complaints that the show was too intense, too depressing, and not suitable for children. School groups and advocacy organizations argued that the show's doomsday tone could cause anxiety and nightmares. One episode featuring a potential nuclear meltdown was pulled from several international markets. The show was canceled after 1 season of 13 episodes, but gained a cult following for its ahead-of-its-time environmental messages. Decades later, it inspired the surreal adult parody Sealab 2021, which pointed out just how bizarre the original concept was, a children's cartoon about the constant threat of death by drowning. The Fantastic Four, 1978. Marvel's first family got completely rewritten for animation when NBC decided the Human Torch was too scary for children. Instead of Johnny Storm, viewers got Herbie, the robot, a beeping sidekick created specifically for the cartoon who replaced a founding member of the team. The official explanation was that NBC feared children would set themselves on fire trying to imitate the Human Torch. But rumors persisted that it was because Universal owned the rights to the character for a never-made live-action project. Either way, the show completely altered the team's dynamic by removing the hot-headed Johnny and replacing him with a cutesy robot. The writing team had no idea what to do with Herbie, giving him inconsistent powers and personality traits that changed episode to episode. Sometimes he was a genius computer, other times just comic relief. Stan Lee, who narrated the show, reportedly hated the change, but was powerless to stop it. Other bizarre rewrites included turning Dr. Doom from a complex villain into a cackling madman, and giving the Thing a transformation sequence where he would yell, "It's clobberin' time!" to change from Ben Grimm to his Rocky form, something that never happened in the comics where he was permanently transformed. Despite featuring some classic comic storylines, the show lasted only one season. Marvel fans were so traumatized by Herbie that the robot became a punchline in comic book circles for decades afterwards. Jabberjaw, 1976. Jaws was the biggest movie of the decade, so naturally, Hanna-Barbera rewrote it as a cartoon about a talking shark who played drums in a rock band and fought crime in underwater cities. Yes, really. In 1976, Hanna-Barbera had a meeting that probably went like this. Scooby-Doo is successful. Jaws is successful. What if we combined them but made the shark a drummer in a band and set it in the future underwater? And instead of firing everyone involved, they made Jabberjaw, a show about a 15-foot great white shark who played drums for a band called the Neptunes. In the year 2076, Jabberjaw wasn't just a shark who could talk. He was a shark with self-esteem issues who desperately wanted respect, but was constantly rejected by everyone, including his own bandmates. His catchphrase was, no respect at all, delivered in a Curly Howard impression. The underwater world made absolutely no sense. People lived in domed cities but could somehow breathe water when convenient. They drove regular cars underwater with wheels. The band played electric instruments underwater without short-circuiting. Every episode featured the Neptunes traveling to a different underwater city to perform a concert, only to encounter some villain trying to take over the ocean. Jabberjaw would save the day, while his human bandmates treated him like garbage, learning absolutely nothing about friendship from episode to episode. Despite its ridiculous premise and logical inconsistencies, the show ran for 16 episodes and developed a cult following, proving that in the 1970s, absolutely any concept could become a children's cartoon, no matter how nonsensical. The Adventures of Muhammad Ali, 1977. CBS took the world's greatest boxer and rewrote him as a Saturday morning superhero who traveled the world fighting aliens and monsters. Muhammad Ali's cartoon version maintained his rhyming style but traded real-life struggles for sci-fi adventures. The show starring Ali as himself aimed to showcase the boxing champ's courage, integrity, and sense of justice. But within weeks, it was at the center of a controversy so fierce that some stations pulled it before the season was over. The animated Ali retained his real-life confidence, often predicting in rhyme when he would defeat that episode's villain, just as the real Ali predicted knockout rounds. But instead of fighting Joe Frazier or George Foreman, cartoon Ali battled mad scientists, alien invaders, and even a mummy in one particularly bizarre episode. For starters, the show didn't shy away from the real-world struggles Ali faced. Racism, prejudice, and standing up for what's right, even when it was unpopular. One episode showed Ali confronting racial slurs and bigotry. Another had him giving a classroom speech about resisting war and questioning authority, a not-so-subtle nod to his real-life stance against the Vietnam draft. The show only lasted 13 episodes before controversy, and poor ratings ended it. Ali himself was reportedly unhappy with how the show portrayed his religious beliefs, and the network grew uncomfortable with the political undertones in what was supposed to be simple children's entertainment. Harlem Globetrotters, 1970 to 1973. The world-famous basketball team got completely rewritten for animation, transformed from skilled athletes into crime-fighting adventurers who used basketballs to defeat supervillains. On the surface, it's just goofy fun, but dig an inch deeper and you'll hit a minefield of outdated portrayals and cringe-inducing stereotypes. First, props where they're due. The real Globetrotters were trailblazers, mixing comedy and athleticism while challenging racial barriers. But the cartoon, well, let's just say subtlety was not its strong suit. The animated Globetrotters are a team of happy-go-lucky black athletes, always ready with a trick shot or a cheesy joke. Zipping from one misadventure to another, they're accompanied by a talking dog named Dribbles because, of course, and the villains are less menacing and more Scooby-Doo with a head injury. The strangest part? The dialogue is a masterclass in tone deafness, and the music is a non-stop parade of Motown-like jingles and groovy background numbers that sound suspiciously like a tax write-off. Actual basketball took a back seat to the team, foiling jewel heists and outwitting pirates using basketballs as weapons. The voice cast was composed of talented actors with Scatman Crothers providing the voice for Meadowlark Lemon, Stu Gilliam for Freddie Curly Neal, and Johnny Williams for Hubert Geese Osby, among others. Their voices brought an authentic feel to the characters. Despite its problematic elements, the show ran for 3 seasons and even spawned a spin-off called Super Globetrotters, where the team gained superpowers. The Funky Phantom, 1971 to 1972. Hanna-Barbera completely rewrote American history with this bizarre Scooby-Doo clone featuring a revolutionary war-era ghost and his spectral cat solving mysteries with modern teens. Imagine Scooby-Doo with a Revolutionary War twist, and you've got the Funky Phantom. This quirky show followed 3 teens, Skip, Augie, and April, and their dog Elmo as they solve mysteries with the help of a friendly ghost named Jonathan Wellington Muddsy Muddlemore. Muddsy, who had accidentally locked himself in a clock during the Revolutionary War, was accidentally freed by the gang in modern times, along with his ghostly cat Boo. The show's take on history was laughably inaccurate. Muddsy spoke in a bizarre mix of colonial expressions and 1970s slang, using phrases like "heavens to Delaware" and "that's what I call a groovy revolution." His stories about historical figures changed every episode, once claiming Ben Franklin was his main man, and another time saying he couldn't stand that kite-flying dude. Muddsy had inconsistent ghost powers, sometimes able to walk through walls, and other times bumping into them for comedic effect. The ghostly cat Boo could talk, despite no explanation for how a normal cat from the 1770s developed speech in the afterlife. Despite being a transparent attempt to copy the Scooby-Doo formula with a historical twist, the show ran for 17 episodes before executives realized that ruining American history wasn't the best use of Saturday morning airtime. Still, it developed enough of a following that Muddsy made cameo appearances in other Hanna-Barbera shows for years afterward. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, 1972 to 1974. Hanna-Barbera completely rewrote the family sitcom formula with America's first primetime animated series for adults, creating a cartoon version of All in the Family that tackled political divisions, generation gaps, and social upheaval. If you think The Simpsons invented the dysfunctional animated family, let me introduce you to Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. This one's for the deep-cut cartoon historians. A prime-time animated sitcom that's part All in the Family, part fever dream, and all kinds of controversial. Imagine a show where the big laughs come from casual bigotry, paranoia, and an endless parade of back-in-my-day rants, all aimed squarely at the changing America of the 1970s. Sound like a ratings bonanza? Sure did for about 5 minutes. Meet Harry Boyle, the original grumpy conservative cartoon dad, constantly at war with his liberated wife, counterculture kids, and of course, the neighbors. His neighbor Ralph was a right-wing conspiracy theorist who spent his time building bomb shelters and searching for communists. The humor is pulled straight from real-life culture wars. Harry rails against hippies, feminism, civil rights protests, and anything else that might upset the delicate order of his middle-class suburban world. Episodes tackled Vietnam, drug use, women's liberation, and racial tension, topics that had never been addressed in animation before. The show only lasted 2 seasons but broke significant ground for adult animation. Without Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, we might never have gotten The Simpsons, Family Guy, or any other adult-oriented animated sitcom that followed. Which of these rewrites shocked you the most? Drop a comment below and let me know which cartoon adaptation completely butchered its source material in your opinion. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into animation's wildest era. And ask yourself this: in today's world of social media backlash and instant outrage, would networks still dare to completely rewrite established properties? Or have we finally learned our lesson about respecting original material?